Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. Thank you, sister.
Thank you, Brother Abdel Ati and Brother Youssef. Our next speaker was stranded for some time in Palestine when the war on Gaza escalated last October. We are so grateful that despite considerable difficulty, he was able to leave safely, and we are fortunate that he is here to speak with us tonight. Dr. Riaz Bagha, who has resided in Sudbury for over 25 years, is a founder of both the Northern Muslim Association and the Islamic Center of Ontario, and is currently the president of Icono, a mosque on Pioneer Road in the South End. He is the author of the book, A Seedling of Hope, Optimist in the 21st Century from Prophet Muhammad's Legacy. Welcome, Dr. Riaz.
Thank you so much, Justine. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge that we are standing on First Nation indigenous land, and we thank them for giving us this opportunity. So I have 5 copies of my book that I'm going to distribute free. I'm going to give one to Justine, and the organizers can grab a copy from her. And if you need more, please let me know, and I'll send more to her. So, like as Justine said, just before October 7th, a few days before October 7th, we landed in Israel, in Palestine, what should be Palestine, and we made our way close to the Masjid al-Aqsa, the Holy Mosque. And the next day, we went out for a walk. And we passed by a small church. And as we were walking in the courtyard, the Reverend came out and greeted us warmly. And I didn't know the conflict that was going on or how the Christians felt in that land, in their land as well. So we started talking, and he says, you know, many Zionists come and speak at our church, and oftentimes it's the Muslim local Palestinians who come and clean it up. And I found that very moving. So he was very empathetic to the struggle that the Palestinians were undergoing. So, and then after that, a few days later, we went and we were walking along the old Jerusalem city, and we passed by the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is one of the holiest sites in Christianity. And next to that, we visited Masjid Umar. Now, there's a very interesting story about Masjid Umar. And the story goes that when the Muslims conquered Jerusalem, the clergy of the time, they said, we are not going to give you the keys to the city except to the caliph. Now, the third caliph, he was a companion of Prophet Muhammad. So he made his way all the way from Medina on a camel, and they would take turns. So he would ride the camel for half the time, and his companion or his friend would take half the time. So as they were approaching the city, they were close to the city, And so the companion, the servant or the guide, he says, no, you must ride the camel now because we are approaching the city limits and they will be coming to greet us. He says, no, we have agreed to do half the time. So this shows the justice of Islam, that he wouldn't favor himself. So he says, no, it is your turn to ride and I'm going to be guiding the camel. I'm going to be walking the camel. So as they approach the city, the clergy greeted the guide, not knowing that the guide was being led by the caliph. So later on, as they were touring the city and the keys were handed on over to Umar, the companion of the Prophet, they happened to be near the church. And so the clergy of the time, they asked him to, it was time for the prayer, So he's asked them, that why don't you pray inside the church? He says, no. If I do, though we are the conquerors, if I do, the people who will come after me, they may take that as a sign that that they may overcome and declare that as a place for themselves. So he says, no, I'm going to go and pray at the doorsteps. So you will find, as you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there's Masjid Umar. As it was predicted, as he had predicted, they built a masjid where he had prayed. So this again shows that he loved to live, the justice of Islam is for everybody. Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And all faiths. So the other thing that I wanted to say a few words of is 5 quick points. The Ten Commandments apply to all of us. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not lie. All those commandments apply to Muslims, Jews, and Christians. Some live by it, some do not live by it. So we should always know that our cause is right, because those who steal the land, they are breaking the commandment. So don't ever get dissuaded that our cause is not the right cause, because not to steal, not to kill applies to all faiths. So if they kill, and we can see kids being bombed, they are not on the right cause. We are on the right cause. So we should always be steadfast in what our cause is. The other thing that I want to emphasize is that we have, all of you are Martin Luther Kings, the Mandelas, the Malcolm X's, the Mother Teresa's. You have come out on the right cause, and we have activated the university students. Now the leaders don't come except from our youth. So all of us have activated the youth. And this is so important, because these are the bright minds of the future. All over the world, the youth are standing up. The university students are standing up. They will be the future leaders. So don't hope that victory will be immediate. Victory comes when God gives us victory. But victory is with us regardless. It's already with us. So be steadfast and stay strong. And I really thank all of you for coming. We are all really proud of you. And, keep it up. Jazakallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Riaz. At this time, I would like to invite Will Morin, an Ojibwe artist, educator, and storyteller, to speak on the connection between all Indigenous peoples, cultures, and oppressions.
Anin. Nishan. Well, morning, Jishnakas. Giwedan on those with Mangandas, Mangandorum, Mishbagwadan on Nojba, Deda Mampi at the Kamixing and Ishnabek and Swakmak. My name is Will. That's my income tax name. Those of you that haven't filed yet. My sharing that I want to give today is recognizing how important that the speakers that came before me and the sharing of our friend that shared before me, just I'm feeling humbled and inadequate because of what was already shared and what was already sung in that song, and how powerful it is, because it requires something that I got from your presentation as you spoke about, which is one of the key messages in your book as well as in Islam, is the necessity for humility, to be humble. Daba dendezuin in Ojibwe. I'm of mixed ancestry. My mom Ojibwe, my father French. I'm confusion. And some of that confusion is because so much of what we live within, one of my friends, Spider Alan Asher's over there, he shared this with me years ago and woke me up, and it's key. Who here speaks French? What's September? Septembre, right? What's 7 in French? So why is September the 9th month? So that's part of the confusion that I'm talking about, is that we have so much that has been told to us, but there was a lot more that was not told to us, that was not shared with us. And having been asked to speak specifically about the connection between Indigenous peoples and what occurred in Palestine, first, I'm going to say a few things that might make you uncomfortable. Who here is of French ancestry? No, you're not, you're European. Who here is of Italian ancestry? No, you're not, you're European. Anybody here Belgium? No, you're European. Are you hearing what I'm saying? If you say Indigenous, you can't claim to be the culture from the country that you come from. Because we're not on Indigenous land, we're on Anishinaabe land. And if you go south of Sudbury 3 hours, you're on Mohawk land. You go up north 3 hours, you're on Cree land. Are you getting my geography lesson here? Canada has many Indigenous tribes, and each of them can be defined by the uniqueness of the geography that is Canada. From Sudbury to Toronto, you pass through 7 First Nation traditional territories, many of which are Anishinaabe, Ojibwe. So what I ask of you is I encourage you not to use the word Indigenous if you know otherwise. So, you go for a trip somewhere in Canada, find out whose land you're on. You follow me? Because if not, then you're colonizing. That reality of colonization, that expression, when in Rome, do as the Romans, you've heard that phrase before? What happens when Rome lands on you? Who here is a lawyer? Anybody a lawyer out there? Any lawyers? Notice they're not here. So what's the test for a lawyer? For a lawyer to become a lawyer, what's the name of the test? The bar. Now my question is, what's the bar? Don't tell me it's a test. What is the bar? To become a barrister, to become a lawyer in Canada, you must learn another culture's law, which is British maritime common law. Our Canadian legal system is a foreign legal system on Indigenous land. And that bar is the railing on the ship. In the same way a judge and a captain of a ship can marry you, it's because they come from that same system. That our government, our legal system, is a foreign legal system. Anishinaabe people here have our own laws, our own rules. And Canada has been violating them since contact. And we don't know we are doing it. And one of them is what is happening around the world, which is affecting all of us, is climate change. Because one of the core tenets in many spiritual traditions is about you don't piss in the water you drink from. But we do today. We look for solutions to problems that we're creating instead of avoiding the problem and causing the damage. Our legal system being what it is, our government system being what it is a foreign legal system. Canada is a boat on Indigenous land. Much like what was occurring in 1948. In Canada, at that very same time, it was against the law for Indigenous peoples to practice their culture. It was against the law for them to hire lawyers to take the government to task for not honoring treaties. It was legal for the government to go in and take Indigenous children away from their communities and put them into residential schools. Residential schools were systems of indoctrination, of assimilation, to take the Indigenous, the Native, the Indian out of the child. Because that was Duncan Campbell Scott, the Superintendent of Indian Affairs back in the 1920s, basically said the objective is to eliminate the Indian in the child so that they can be absorbed into the body politic, so that they can become Canadian. That in itself is an act of genocide. It's an erasure. Does anybody know when the last residential school closed? When was it? No, sorry, it hasn't closed. It's called the education system. Because what was done to Indigenous peoples are now doing to you if you and your family have just come to Canada. Because what is its intent is to not educate you about your history. It's only teaching you a narrow cultural view. And that fundamental thing that makes us uncomfortable is what's going to wake us up. And many of us are here, are awakened to the things that are uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. Another thing about what the government was seeing that they had the right to do was they were taking people's identity away. My grandmother was marrying, my mom's mother married my grandfather who was a mixed blood. His mom was Ojibwe, his dad was French. So he lost his status. So when my grandmother and my grandfather were going to get married, she surrendered her status and got $20 so that they would be taken off the registry. They would be removed from their culture. And this was happening before the Nakba here in Canada. So what was happening in Palestine in the last 70 plus years, Indigenous peoples are still recovering from, and we will for many generations to come. Because when we recognize the journey that we're on as human beings, each and every one of us, when we come into that understanding, how important it is to be humane to one another. Earlier, there was a man running by or walking his dog, and he was yelling during that prayer, that song that was sung. And how I noticed a woman who was upset about it and went to try to argue with a rock. You know what I'm talking about? You ever try to argue with somebody who's intoxicated by their ignorance? Oh wait, they're called politicians. Or they're called people in positions of presumed power and privilege. And anything that we say threatens their power and privilege. Many First Nation communities live in poverty. Many First Nation communities can't drink the water that is in their communities. The city of Winnipeg gets its water from Shoal Lake, but Shoal Lake First Nation can't drink the water that Winnipeg and Winnipeggans get to. That having water accessible is a privilege. Being poor is a choice. Not of those that are poor, it's for those that have that power, those that have that money, those that have that sense of entitlement. If you have a deed, if you own your own land, your own house, put up your hand. Now, my question is, how did you come to that? Worked hard. However, the person you bought it from might have bought it from somebody who bought it from someone when it was taken from indigenous peoples. You could say you own, but I'm sorry you don't. Because an indigenous culture and tradition and value that was nearly wiped out and exterminated was a value of importance. The earth is our mother, and you cannot own your mother. And she will always provide and share with everyone equally. Connor, when he sung that song that was sung at the very beginning in his introduction, when he introduced himself, he said a word, "Been again." Can you guys say it? Been again. Try it. That word, and I'll break it down just so that you have an understanding of the value that I'm speaking about. The word be in that beginning of that word, been again, that be is in words that refer to bih, nibih, or nibish, which is water. How many of you came into this world after the water flowed? Okay, unless you've been hatched, okay? Your mom's water broke and you came into this world. Water, nibih, nibish. Bih and bi is what water does. It's always flowing. It's always coming. So when you say been again, you're saying come. Now put your fingers on your belly button. Again, if you've been hatched, you don't have one. But if you got one, put your finger on your belly button. Come on, you do. Come on. If you got a belly button, that means you came from inside your mother. You don't own her. You're connected to her. And that's confirmation that there is a link between you and your mother. And Indigenous values has that as a core fundamental teaching, that we are connected to the earth wherever we are. And that's why all spiritual traditions from all cultures on the earth recognize that. But the wounded focus on themselves and not listen to their mother. And the damage that is being done in the world today is based on a tradition and the value of the hurting people. The abused become abusers. And what is key, we need to keep focused on what the earth is giving and how she gives it. She gives it with love. That love that the earth shares with each and every human being on this planet is to be celebrated. And it is done in the prayers that we see in Islam, as well as in Indigenous prayers, that we recognize and acknowledge all the four directions. Who doesn't know what a medicine wheel is? So everybody knows what a medicine wheel is? If you don't know, it's a circle divided into four equally, recognizing the four directions and the four colors of humankind. A symbol that goes back over 5,000 years with a teaching that they would all come to live here on Turtle Island. North America is Turtle Island. So what we see here is that prophecy that was prophesied over 5,000 years ago, that what we see on the lawn here today is what we predicted, that in order for the world to begin healing, because it's a medicine wheel, we need to come together equally. So what color is our education system? In the four colors of the medicine wheel, it's white, yellow, red, black. Now that white is that Western European, the yellow is that Asian, the red is the Indigenous North American, the black is that African. What color is our legal system? What color is our government system? So my question is, that medicine wheel is mostly white. And it's a wheel, and if the wheel is out of whack and the spokes are not aligned, what happens to your wheel? You crash. And that's what we're doing. That's what's happening since the Nakba, since October 7th, because people are crashing and burning because they're not ready to heal. But those of us that are ready to heal, we can't tell someone, heal. We can't tell an alcoholic, stop drinking. We can't tell a politician, listen to me. One of my friends said, Louis de Longchamp said many years ago, you can't change a politician's mind because they don't have a mind to change. Because they're controlled or contained or spoken to say what a specific ideology is. But indigenous cultures in the Americas, when we meet other people of life experiences, why indigenous peoples in the Americas have stood with Palestinians is because we know what it's like to not be listened to. We know what it feels like to not be included. There is a document called the Indian Act. The Indian Act is a separate set of federal laws that apply only to indigenous peoples and not Canadians. Laws that since have been changed, but at one time the government had total control. And when treaties were signed, they were meant to be equal. We were understood that they would be equal between indigenous peoples and European settlers. But as soon as those documents were signed, written in a European language, the government created these systems, which included the Indian Act, that turned indigenous peoples into wards of the state. Sound familiar? You guys understand what I'm saying? Indigenous peoples in Canada, if you're a status indigenous person, it's the same way that Israel treats Palestinians. Not as equals, but as a burden. And that is a sign of their wound, not ours. It's a sign of their weakness, not ours. Our strength is understanding the humanity in each other. And when we stand together, we become stronger. In the same way that when we have a single blade of grass, it is brittle once it dries. But if you braid them all together, then it becomes medicine for healing. That medicine wheel will begin to do its healing when we see more of indigenous traditions within our governing system, our legal system, and so forth. Locally here, those of you that may not be aware, they are opening up this month an indigenous justice court. Our own system, our own culture within a legal framework. That wouldn't have come about 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, because we have to plant the seed. As Olathe said earlier, that we need to see things that take time. As our guest speaker, Dr. said, how important it is that we need to begin that process. But we plant the seed and nurture it, and that requires humanity to come together. And when we braid ourselves together as a people, nothing can break us. So if I could get you guys all, yeah, thank you, because that's what it is. I want you all together to applaud yourselves, but I want you to take your left arm, if you're right-handed, and I want you to pat yourself on the back. Oh, and if you're right-handed, or if you're left-handed, I want you to use your right hand and pat yourself on the back. Because you need to be rewarded and acknowledged and appreciated for the work that you're doing as well. So I say, Miigwech, thank you for listening to me, and how important it is that you continue to understand, standing together, we will continue to be. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Will. Our next speaker is a second-generation Palestinian who has called Sudbury home for 8 years. Welcome, Adam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you and the mercy and blessings of Allah, God. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. قال ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني. My Lord, uplift my heart for me and make my task easy and remove the impediment from my tongue so people may understand my speech. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to talk about the power of images and masks, a power they hold over us and will continue holding over us so long as we don't look at them, at the underlying and sometimes very ugly reality beneath them. We will also be looking at what the American political theorist and contemporary political writer Sheldon Wolin called inverted totalitarianism. Recently, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave a speech in which he said, quote, "In a country like Canada, it should be safe, and it must be safe, to declare oneself a Zionist. Jewish or not, Zionism is not a dirty word or something anyone should be targeted for agreeing with." He goes on to say, "Shortly after the Holocaust, Israel was established as a safe haven for the Jewish people, a place to live in security and with dignity, a place to build a future without fear. This self-image is the mask they want us to look at. No different than the criminal will justify and mask his crimes of theft, rape, and murder as contributing to the greater good." He said, Zionism is not a dirty word. I would agree. Zionism is not a dirty word, just like genocide, Nazi, Waffen-SS, Holocaust, and mass grave are not dirty words. Just recently, for example, Trudeau led 2 standing ovations for a man in Parliament, a Mr. Yaroslav Hunka, a man who was referred to as a Canadian and Ukrainian hero who was a Nazi. But he wasn't just a plain Jane Nazi. He was a member of the most vicious cohort of Nazis, the Ukrainian 14th Waffen Division of the Schutzstaffel, the SS, the First Galatian. Trudeau goes on to make the claim that Israel was established as a Jewish nation, but as usual, as we continually see, this is simply a false mask. The origins of the Zionist movement weren't simply secular, they were anti-religious, they did not like Judaism, and they were trying to reinvent what Jewishness meant for another generation. The founder of modern Zionism and the visionary of the Jewish state, Theodor Herzl, spoke neither Hebrew nor Yiddish, had no Jewish education, and was so thoroughly secular as to appear in fin de siècle Paris and Vienna, the very image of a dashing boulevardier. Theodor Herzl, many now forget, did not believe in God or Judaism. The state he sought to create would be a secular state based on the idea of Jewish national and ethnic identity and incorporating those features he found most attractive in 19th century Europe, particularly Germany. This is a point we're going to touch on later. The chief rabbi of Vienna, Martis Goodman, denounced the mirage of Jewish nationalism. Belief in one God was the unifying factor for Jews, he declared, and Zionism was incompatible with Judaism's teachings. Herzl exploited the competition between European states, telling them that he'd secure the interests of the supporting European states against those that did not support the establishment of Israel. The 1907 British report submitted to British Prime Minister Henry Campbell Bannerman recommended establishing a buffer state in Palestine that would be hostile to its neighbors and friendly to Europe, with the aim to divide the region and so assure Britain's continued dominance. Such a foreign entity would be dependent on European colonialism, and its survival guaranteed in a quid pro quo so long as it kept surrounding states weak. In a speech on October 26, 2023, while speaking to Israeli President Isaac Herzog, US President Joe Biden repeatedly said, and I'll say, quote, I'll say this 5,000 times in my career, the ironclad commitment the US has to Israel, based on our principles, ideas, and values, they're the same values. And he goes on to repeat a statement he made in 1986, and which he's repeated many times: if there was not an Israel, we'd have to invent one. The question is why? Trudeau continues to say that Israel is a safe haven for the Jewish people. But if we look beneath this pleasant veil, we can see that Israel is nothing like a safe haven, not only for the Jews outside Israel, but also for those within. Between 1950 and 1951, there were a series of bombings targeting Baghdad's Jewish community, including the Masuda Shem Tov synagogue in Baghdad, Iraq. Between those years, around 110,000 Jews, of a population of approximately 135,000, emigrated from Iraq to Israel, and there is a wide consensus from Iraqi Jews, British embassy officials, and renowned historians that these actions were taken by Zionist agents to precipitate the emigration of Iraq's Jewry, who were reluctant to leave. Again, it begs the question, why would the purported safe haven for world Jewry be bombing world Jewry? As for these newly arrived migrants, Zionism's early leaders condemned them for being too Arab, calling them uneducated masses and savages, and treated them and treated brown Jews and Jews from Muslim origins as inferior, and encouraging them to unlearn their Arabic accents. We need to remember that the father of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, envisioned an ethnic state, his words, quote unquote, incorporating those features he found most attractive in 19th century Europe, particularly Germany, and this ethnic state was in furtherance of European imperialism. Similarly, Duncan Campbell Scott, which Mr. Morin spoke about, at the height of the Canadian concentration camp system, treacherously called residential schools, used to intern and conduct a cultural and literal genocide of the indigenous peoples, men, women, children, and babies of Turtle Island, said that he wanted to, quote, kill the Indian in the child. Here we see too that just like Israel and Herzl, Canada and Duncan Scott envisioned an ethno-state that didn't pay heed to religion or the content of one's character, but solely one's race, again, in the furtherance of European colonialism. In the years spanning 1948 to 1954, thousands of Yemenite Jewish babies and toddlers went missing in what would later be called the Yemenite Jewish Affair. This affair involved the kidnapping of these children by the Israeli medical system to be given to childless European Jewish couples, sold to international adoptive families, often in the United States, as well as the use of these children to conduct medical experiments, including testing them for Negro blood. and harvesting their hearts post-mortem in a project purportedly funded by the US. Doctors at the camps told their parents their children had died but refused to hand over bodies or death certificates. And my final example of Zionism and Israel's allegiance to white supremacy, fascism, and Nazi behavior is the vicious campaign of eugenics that targeted Ethiopian Jewish women by forcing injections on them as a prerequisite to migrating to Israel. They were never told what these injections were, nor the serious side effects caused by these mysterious injections, but in a scandal uncovered when social workers noticed the birth rate among Ethiopian immigrants having in a decade, these injections turned out to be Depo-Provera, a contraceptive that stops menstruation and has been linked to fertility problems and osteoporosis. It revealed that women were started on a course of contraceptive jabs while still in transit camps in Ethiopia, some without being told they were being given birth control, and many having no idea of the side effects. When they eventually arrived in Israel, doctors continued the treatment unquestioningly, even though the women refused, only relenting after being told that without the injections, they wouldn't be allowed in Israel. Dr. Moshira Aboudia, a gynecologist working at Jerusalem's Hadassah Medical Center, said the majority of Ethiopian women she had met received Depo-Provera injections. This is a policy, quote, that no one will admit, no one in Israel will take responsibility for the treatment in the camps, but someone must have instigated it, and it would not be in Ethiopia's interest to treat women preparing to leave the country, Aboudia said, end quote. We've seen and heard Trudeau's attempt to have us accept and identify Zionism's self-image, the mask he wants us to defend. But once we peer beneath the mask and go beyond the self-image and see the roots, words, and deeds of Zionism and its inability to be separated from European imperialism, colonialism, and ethnic nationalism, we should not be surprised that Zionism, far from providing a safe haven for Jews, provides them only with a hierarchical and militarized barracks, an ideology and state that eats its children and sells itself as the cure to a problem it created to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. At this time, I'd like to invite Jody and Ella, both dedicated members of Palestine Solidarity Sudbury, for a reading of Palestinian poetry.
Hello. I'm going to read a poem. This is an excerpt from a poem that was created when parents started resorting to writing their children's names on their legs to help identify if either they or their children are killed. And this was written just this past October by Zina Azam, a Palestinian child. And I have a hard time getting through it, but write my name on my leg, Mama. Use the black marker with the ink that doesn't bleed if it gets wet. The one that doesn't melt if it's exposed to heat. Write my name on my leg, Mama. Make the lines thick and clear. Add your special flourishes so that I can take comfort in seeing my Mama's handwriting when I go to sleep. Write my name on my leg, Mama, and on the legs of my sisters and brothers too. This This way, we will belong together. This way, we will be known as your children. Write my name on my leg, Mama, and please write your name and Baba's name on my legs too, so we will be remembered as a family. Write my name on my leg, Mama, when the bombs hit our house and the walls crush our skulls and bones. Sorry, our legs will tell our story, how there was nowhere for us to run.
This one? Yeah. Just that one? Okay, sweet. This first poem is by Palestinian playwright Khalid Juma. I'm first going to say that, like a lot of people, I take issue with calling this a war. It's settler colonialism, it's ethnic cleansing, it's genocide. It's not just a war. With that being said, whenever I hear the phrase war on children, I think of this poem, Rascal Children of Gaza, by Khalid Juma. O rascal children of Gaza, you who constantly disturbed me with your screams under my window, you who filled every morning with rush and chaos, you who broke my vase and stole the lonely flower on my balcony, come back and scream as you want and break all the vases, steal all the flowers, come back, just come back.
This poem was written 3 years ago by Abdel Fattah Absurur. This was written to the Israelis. So Nakba, 73 years passed. Did you do your best yet? Elders did die, yet the young did not forget. Have you done your worst yet? Occupation, oppression, corruption, spoliation, falsification, theft, massacres, colonization, ethnic cleansing, terror. Have you done your worst yet? Generation after generation, Nakba after Nakba, accusations of the victims to be terrorists despite all your past and present terrorism. Have you done your worst yet? Aim, shoot, shell, kill, destroy, whatever you do. Have you done your worst yet? Despite your worst, you will ever do, you will fail. Failure after failure to uproot us from our land. Holiness inhabits us. Faith fills our heart. Resilience, resistance, dignity, beauty, humanity that you will never understand. Do your worst. The challenge is open. Deep are our roots. Strong is our resilience. Never ending is our resistance. Never fading is our hope. Do your worst, and we will continue to do our best.
This second poem that I'm going to read is by Palestinian writer, professor, and activist Rifat Al-Rir. I would be remiss not to say that the University of Gaza, where he taught, has been destroyed. Every university in Gaza has been destroyed, and Rifat was murdered by Israeli drone strike just December 6th of last year. If I Must Die, by Rifat Al-Rir. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza will looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love, If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
Thank you so much for those moving readings, Jody and Ella. I very shortly will invite Brother Abdel Ati back up as we will be closing the vigil with a prayer. But before handing the floor over, I want to remind you all of our upcoming rally this Saturday, May 18th at 2 p.m. outside of Costco. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank each of our speakers. So if you could each come up here, we have a gift for you. Speakers. I want to express, on behalf of Palestine Solidarity Sudbury, our sincerest thanks for joining us today on the 76th Nakba Day to honor the plight of Palestinians past and present, and to call for the total and complete liberation of Palestine. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. The fight for Palestinian liberation has been long, but it will ultimately prevail, and everyone here today will be remembered for their commitment to humanity. We ask that you channel the strong emotions of this evening into continued activism and advocacy for an end to this and every ongoing genocide, apartheid, occupation, and injustice. None of us are free until we are all free. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Thank you. And with that, I would like to invite Brother Abdel Ati back up.
Thank you, sister. Thank you, everyone. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and Allah's mercy be upon you all. Today, as we gather to commemorate Nakba Day, we stand shoulder to shoulder with the Palestinian people in their unwavering pursuit of justice, freedom, and the right to return to their homeland. En cette journée de commémoration de la Nakba, nous exprimons notre soutien indéfectible au peuple palestinien dans leur quête de justice et de liberté. Leur résilience face à l'oppression et à la occupation est une source d'inspiration pour nous tous. Alors que nous nous rassemblons pour honorer leurs histoires et leurs luttes, engageons-nous à rester solidaires et à ouvrir ensemble pour un avenir où la Palestine soit enfin libre. Ensemble, continuons à élever nos voix, à défendre les droits humains et à lutter contre toute forme d'injustice que la mémoire de la Nakba nous rappelle l'importance de lutter pour un monde plus juste et équitable. Nakba marks a harrowing chapter in Palestinian history, a time when countless innocent civilians were ruthlessly massacred, their homes destroyed, and their land seized through force and violence. Nakba is not merely a chapter confined to the past, it's a living reality for the Palestinians who continue to endure the brutalities of occupation, siege, apartheid on a daily basis. Their resilience in the face of such horrors is both remarkable and humbling to the rest of us. As we stand here today, we reaffirm our steadfast commitment to the Palestinians' cause. We refuse to be silent bystanders in the face of the injustice. And we will continue to amplify the voice of the oppressed, advocating for their rights and freedom on the global stage. The Zionist, the criminal, the terrorist, David Ben-Gurion, said once, "The old die and the young forget." The old die and the young forget. الكبار يموتون والصغار ينسون. His words serve as a reminder of the attempts to erase the memory of the Nakba from history. But today, we declare with unwavering resolve, we remember, and we will never forget. Burn in hell, David. We do not forget. The sacrifices of those who came before us fuel our determination to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians. I extend a heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for your unwavering support. You, the courageous souls in Sudbury, who stand firm in the face of intimidation and opposition. Together, we are the voice of justice, the beacon of hope, and the force for change. Together, we will continue to advocate for the rights of the Palestinians until they are free from oppression and justice. Brothers and sisters, please, I'm going to be giving like a small prayer in Arabic, small dua. Please join me in that. الله يا رب اللهم ألهم أهل فلسطين الصبر والجلد في وجه اضطهاد وظلم الصهاينة المجرمين وخذلان الأقربين. اللهم افتح لهم أبواب نصرك ورحمتك وانصرهم على من ظلمهم وأعزهم على من عاداهم يا من لا تضيع عدل. اجعل نصرهم قريبا واجعلهم الغالبين عاجلا غير آجل يا رحمن يا رحيم. اللهم اجعلهم في ظلك وحمايتك وارزقهم السلم والسلام والأمن والأمان. يا رب فرج كربهم وارحم ضعفهم والهمهم الثبات عند لقاء عدوك وعدوهم. اللهم لا تخفض لهم راية ولا تبلغ للصهاينة المجرمين عليهم غاية. اللهم أعزهم بقدرتك يا قوي يا جبار يا متين. اللهم ارحم شهداءهم وادخلهم فسيح جنانك وارزق أهلهم الصبر والسلوان. يا رب اشفي جراحهم وأعنهم على تحمل مصابهم. اللهم انصرهم ومن والاهم والهم يا رب قادتهم من المقاومين الحكمة والرؤية لقيادة شعبهم نحو الحرية والاستقلال. اللهم آمين اللهم آمين اللهم آمين. Thank you. May Allah reward you all. Thanks. And just to finish it up, if you don't mind, would like to do another adhan. Brother Yusuf. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Thank you again, everyone. That's the end of our evening, and we really appreciate everybody's presence here and commitment to the cause. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. Just I want to ask. Brothers and sisters, just I want to say something. to those who are killing and destroying the houses and displace people from their home. I would like to say on your behalf, what is the first thing a child, a young Palestine, does after he had known that you killed his dad, his family, or his mother, and you took his land? The first thing he will do is he will rebuild his house and replant his olive tree that you uprooted, because the land is his land and the tree is his tree. You thought when you build the wall in the place of the olive tree that you owned the land. No, you are wrong. Someday the wall will fall down and be destroyed because it is an illusion. And the olive tree will grow up because it is the truth, and the truth never die. Thank you so much. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, we'll make the prayer here, if you will enjoy us, inshallah. Abdel, is the prayer time now or not yet?
I like There's like a he was like, oh, and then he like he was like using musical music with his dad on
Oh yeah. I'm watching too much tickets. No. And then right afterwards, he told us that the new landing was free.
That's why I kind of want to get my nails I'm so excited for that next
No, next week.
Sure, if they make me work that way.
Yeah, you don't want to yeah. Nice. See you again.
You too. You want me to? Yeah. I have my car keys, which are like my version, and your car keys.
You want to go to that car? Right now? No, I want to get my. I want to ask you.
There's so many people.
We have 2 minutes. Okay.
I have a meeting today with the president. Not the president, the team guys. They keep bullshitting I have a number, I met her.
Like they have a well documented. For me, I'm not going to make any bones about that.
Yeah.